I'm your host, as always, Nolan, and today we're going to be talking about Kratom withdrawals and what you can expect. So, as always, I am going to be referencing this book that I've written. It's called Kicking Kratom. You're always welcome to pick it up if you want to support my content. Firstly, how long will our withdrawals last? After a ton of research, I ended up putting together this here timeline. The beginning of the acute withdrawal phase. Now, please keep in mind that every single one of us is different. Just like different species of birds have different lengths of beaks. Some bears are brown, some bears are black. Some of us experience withdrawals for longer, and some of us don't experience them much, even if at all. With that in mind, here is a very tentative timeline of what you can expect your withdrawals to look like and how long they'll last. Some people, it's like, whoop-de-dee, I'm done after a day. Haha, that wasn't hard at all. And other people are having fun for months. Within about 12 to 48 hours after you quit, you can expect a few things. Number one is the beginning of the acute withdrawal phase. Acute in medical terms is just a fancy word for saying kind of sudden or severe. This is days 1 to 2. The beginning of the acute withdrawal phase. So your physical symptoms, you can expect mild muscle, joint aches and pains. I know I had those. You can experience what is our favorite symptom, which is restless legs. So this is kind of known as restless leg syndrome, and it essentially means that your legs, or sometimes your arms, are pins and needles, and you have trouble getting them to stay still. Another one, which I also experienced, whoop-dee, is mild flu-like symptoms, such as a runny nose, hot flashes, fever, and issues regulating your body temperature. So I remember I was at work one day, and I was going through these withdrawals, and I had this coat on, and all of a sudden I started sweating, so I took the coat off, and then I got really cold. So I put the coat back on, and I started sweating. And then I took the coat off, and I started sweating again. So there isn't really much you can do to win in those situations. On to the psychological symptoms of days 1 to 2. Within 48 hours of your last dose, you might begin feeling cravings, that you're gonna want Kratom more and more. That's one of the persistent and nagging and really annoying things about withdrawals, is that even though you know you don't want Kratom, your body is going to tell you that you want it. You might begin to feel a little bit depressed or apathetic or anhedonic. So anhedonia is kind of the feeling that you're not getting pleasure out of anything. So this is not a super fun one. Okay, and then we move on to days 2 through 7. So physical symptoms during days 2 through 7, in my experience, if you're going cold turkey, are at their peak. So usually within days 2 through 7, it's not going to get much worse than that. So you are going to experience all of the things that we mentioned that might occur to you in days 1 through 2. And then also one thing that I noticed is that I always needed to yawn. It was every second I just felt like I had to yawn. You might get diarrhea. You might get insomnia. So this is one of the tougher ones to deal with. I remember when I was going through it, I tried sleeping in bed and I couldn't get any sleep, so I tried sleeping on the floor, like a hardwood floor. I tried sleeping on the couch. I tried sleeping on my desk. I tried sleeping on my chair just to feel comfortable, because the restless legs were pretty wild and a little bit gnarly, and I couldn't get comfortable anywhere. So that is pretty much it. And for the psychological symptoms, we're back again with the lack of motivation. Maybe you're having trouble focusing, a little bit depressed, and you have cravings. So the next step is days 7 through 23. For a lot of people, this is where it starts to improve dramatically. So your physical symptoms start to subside. And I think for most people, what persists are the psychological symptoms. And what's so important about this phase of the withdrawal process is just sticking it out. It's gonna get better. Stick it out. You can absolutely do it. Days 23 through 30 is what I call kind of like beginning to breathe again. So you're feeling the freedom that you no longer have Kratom in your life holding you back. You don't have to dose every 4 hours. You are starting to get consistent sleep again without needing to take kratom to go to bed and waking up in the middle of the night and needing to take it again. So the physical symptoms are usually extremely mild during this period of time and have probably subsided completely. The tricky part for some people are what are called post-acute withdrawal syndrome. And this is essentially just the aftermath or the psychological aftermath of quitting, where your brain is trying to recover all of those juicy receptors and it's a little bit confused as to why it doesn't have this consistent stream of dopamine rewarding it all the time. After 1 month, everything's starting to get better. So that is a very rough timeline of symptoms. Everybody is different. If you want to know how it went for me, it probably took me a week to get through the worst of the physical withdrawal symptoms and about 2 to 3 weeks to get through the worst of the psychological symptoms. So this is really good news for you. One of the things that really helped me with my quit was knowing that there was light at the end of the tunnel, or at least knowing that it was going to get better and that I wasn't just stuck in some hole the entire time. Because I don't think anyone wants to be stuck in a hole for a long time unless you're maybe a cave bat or something like that. They probably enjoy that. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about what it was like for me. So I've been reading tons and tons and tons of user reports to put this book together, and I noticed that we all have a lot of things in common. So restless legs are so common. A lot of people experiencing them when they come off of high doses. So, like I mentioned earlier, restless legs are I think it has something to do with your nervous system, but essentially what's happening is your legs feel pretty uncomfortable. It's not a burning sensation, but it's more just that they can't stay still, and it requires your input to like massage them and get them to calm down. It feels almost kind of like they're electrified. So they're not a lot of fun at all. And what I did for restless legs is I tried to take Epsom salt baths, which helped. I tried to work out and get as much of the energy out of my legs and my body as I possibly could so that I could get to sleep. And then on to some others. So some other fun ones, we have the psychological symptoms, which are just not really wanting to do anything at all. So this is so important. When you come off of kratom, you'll probably notice that you just aren't feeling very good. You might feel a little bit lonely. You might feel extra emotional. You might feel depressed. And this is the perfect trampoline for you to start looking at yourself and just forgiving yourself. So being gentle with yourself during this period of your withdrawals is so important. When you decide to quit, you are no longer using kratom as a crutch to prop you up throughout the day. Instead, that's your job. And it's a good job. It's a fun job. What you're tasked with is reinventing yourself and reinventing your life in a way that makes it so that you are fulfilled and so that you don't need to take anything to get through the day. So what I figured out when I was quitting is that nobody is going to make me happy except for myself. I have to do it. It's got to be me, and there's no other way around it. So what that involved for me was, okay, I have a few key issues that keep popping up in my head. One is my worth as a person. You know, when we're on kratom, we're letting a lot of things slide. Our relationships might be taking a hit. So the first step for me was about looking at all of those relationships and looking at myself and realizing that I was not worthless. I'm a good person. I am capable of going out and being a better person. I think the second one is when you don't feel like doing anything, life isn't very fun. So the second thing that I had trouble with was just the meaning in life. That kind of soul essence of life. You know, what is the meaning in all this? Where am I getting fun out of it? And it took a little bit to develop that for me. I figured out that I had to start creating meaning in my life and putting energy into things that I wanted to see that meaning come alive in. So for me, that was something like this, for example. I get to share my stories and try and help people in a way that is meaningful. And another thing is just having fun, or at least trying to have some fun, going out in nature, going on a walk, looking at my favorite movies, writing, reading, biking, kayaking, anything that I can really get my hands on. And then I think a third thing that you might have trouble with, and I certainly had trouble with, was feeling crazy when you're going through withdrawals. You don't have a lot of sleep. You are kind of strung out on this bender trying to quit, and you don't have a lot of support around you, or at least you might not. One of the things that you have to give yourself a bunch of leniency with is allowing yourself to feel just a bit whack. So I remember I'd gone about 48 hours without sleeping. I was not very comfortable. I couldn't really find any comfort anywhere. So I remember reading this comment on Reddit, and it said, like, just embrace the crazy. Allow yourself to feel crazy. This is not a normal thing for anyone to go through, and you're doing it so well, and you are handling it like a champ. And I remember reading that and just going, man, like, I'm not crazy. I'm doing something amazing for myself. I am genuinely helping my life, my body, my lifestyle, the people around me by getting this out of my life. Anyway, so those were a few of the things you can look out for withdrawals. Some things that might help you. Most of this book really is kind of dedicated to helping you with the withdrawal symptoms, because having an arsenal of tips and tricks at hand is so awesome. So one thing that I loved was music. Something that you'll hear come up again and again is how music is starting to sound amazing again. Use it. Listen to your music. Listen to it loud. Obviously don't, damage your eardrums or anything, but turn up the volume and just step back into music that you'd forgotten about, because it's amazing. Another thing is exercise. So exercise is essentially natural kratom, and you don't have to take a drug to experience the feeling that kratom is giving you, which is just the most amazing thing. So it's so hard getting your foot out of the door to go and exercise, but once you do, it's the easiest way to distract yourself from taking more, and it's the easiest way to replace that kind of dopamine that you're losing out on. So another thing are supplements. Now, these vary in reports of their effectiveness, but you can go and try them out. I remember black seed oil worked very well for me, magnesium, liposomal vitamin C worked very well for me, and I recommend just doing some research and looking at what might be best for you. One thing that is so important is be really careful with alcohol when you are withdrawing. It's going to be so tempting to just down a couple beers and try and replace that feeling of kratom with something else. But I can tell you from personal experience, I tried it once. I was like, I'm gonna have a couple beers and see if this helps my withdrawal symptoms. It made it worse. It just made it worse. It just made my restless legs worse. It just made me not happy at all. So don't replace one thing with another is a hugely important piece of advice that I have for you. Anyway, I think that's about it for today. As always, if you want to support my work, you can pick this up on Amazon. There's a link in my bio. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you later.